Welcome to the Never-Ending Backlog Podcast, your place for short reviews from a gamer with the goal of reducing his backlog. From adventures to sandboxes, join our host as we walk through a collection of unplayed treasures. Now, let's take a look at the featured game of this episode of the Never-Ending Backlog.
Hello everybody and welcome back to the Never-Ending Backlog Podcast. I'm your host Zach. And this week we are focusing on the Steam Autumn Sale and 5 games we picked up from Steam that we will be reviewing and letting you know whether or not you should spend your hard-earned money on these games. Just kind of disclaimer, we spent around $25 US dollars on these games, so not a ton, but enough. And this week we are kicking off with a game that is part of a franchise that is probably my favorite PC game franchise, and that franchise is Age of Empires. With today's review of Age of Empires Definitive Edition, probably the least played Age of Empires game that I've played. So what is it? According to Steam, Age of Empires, the pivotal real-time strategy game that launched a 20-year legacy, returns with modernized gameplay, all-new 4K visuals, 8-person multiplayer battles, and a host of other new features. Welcome back to history. The genre is strategy RTS. The release date was 2019. The developers were Forgotten Empires and Tantalus Media. And Forgotten Empires is responsible for Age of Empires Definitive Editions 1, 2, and 3. And Tantalus Media is responsible for Cities Skylines, Stellaris, Sonic Mania, Zombie, Deus Ex Human Revolution, and many others. Publisher is Xbox Game Studios, and as we mentioned in last week's Halo Week, Xbox Game Studios is responsible for the Master Chief Collection, Microsoft Flight Simulator, Sea of Thieves, and other terrific games. You can snag this game for $4.99. However, I was able to actually snag it in the Age of Empires Definitive Collection bundle for $3 and some change, since I had already owned the Definitive Editions of 2 and 3. The regular price for this game is $19.99. So regarding the install and startup, Age of Empires Definitive Edition clocks in at just over 12 gigabytes, which considering the original was able to fit on a CD, it's a definitely sizable increase. However, the game has had a complete remaster, so that's kind of expected. It wasn't a massive install, and they've released multiple patches since release, and this includes all of that as well. Regarding graphics, the Definitive Edition games natively support triple monitor, which is always great. Downside is they don't move the user interface to be in the center screen, so if you're using 5760 by 1080 resolution, which is what I'm doing, the map is in the far corner. The resources are in the other far corner of another monitor. The build is in the bottom left-hand corner of the far monitor. So you're definitely straining your neck in this game. Overall, the gameplay graphics look pretty nice. Everything is definitely cleaner. It's more crisp. I always disable the bloom effect in these games because I think everything looks really fuzzy and warm. However, I will say with the characters, your villagers moving around, it reminds me of one of those terrible Android iOS games that are they're ripoffs of Age of Empires games, especially since a lot of their advertisements are like, oh, we haven't had one of these games since the 90s, and it shows like this vintage CRT computer monitor with actual screenshots of Age of Empires 2, and they're making it look like this Empires game on the mobile devices made by the same people, which it's not. It's a scam, essentially. The characters a little bit look like that. They don't look like the old school Age of Empires 1 or 2. They're a little bit more cartoony, I think. So I'm not as big of a fan of Age of Empires Definitive Edition as I am from 2 and 3, actually. But Definitive Edition isn't a bad looking game. It just doesn't feel like an Age of Empires game. Regarding audio, terrific soundtrack though, with all Age of Empires games. I don't care if it's AoE 1 or AoE 3 or AoE 2. They all have terrific and moving soundtracks, and in my opinion, they are some of the best soundtracks of any RTS on the market. Like, the Age of Empires 2 and 3 soundtracks specifically are just gorgeous soundtracks, and I really enjoyed 3 a lot. For controls, traditional keyboard and mouse RTS controls, you primarily use the mouse. However, you can use hotkeys for setting squads, navigating the map, building units and buildings, etc. Regarding gameplay, you choose the civilization and progress through the ages while collecting resources. There are various victory modes from points to conquest, which tends to be kind of what I focus on. Regarding difficulty can be adjusted. The campaign wasn't too difficult, and they walk you through all the necessities you need to learn. I spend most of my time in custom games or skirmishes, whatever you kind of want to refer to them as. I do not play online, primarily because my focus in RTS games is massive builds, and I'm very slow at it. I don't do the rushing games. I don't memorize hotkeys, and it's not like crazy. I've seen some YouTube videos from people playing like StarCraft 2, and their hotkey functions and like how fast they use hotkeys to like build this massive army is incredible. Like, props to them. I think that's amazing. I cannot do that. Well, I mean, I could if I practiced it, but that's not how I like to play these games. I'm very slow in these games. I mean, I've done multiplayer online games, and I get destroyed so fast, and rightfully so. It's just not the way I play these games. I'm a very slow and steady turtle kind of guy, and I definitely like to build bases. So you can definitely play this online. I don't. If I do play this online, what I do is I actually bring friends and kind of involved with me, so we just kind of build together and we take on bots. The bots are relatively okay. Islands still really impact Age of Empires games, primarily because they don't really leave their island as much. It kind of like the island, like the water becomes like this wall where it's hard for them to kind of breach out. They do have ships and all that stuff, but they really don't expand as much. So it's very easy to just take over all the islands and just swarm their island, which it gets a little boring. So keep an eye on that. Regarding achievements, there are no achievements unlocked so far. However, I didn't finish a skirmish yet completely at the time of this review because I guess that'd take forever. I am assuming that after I finish my first game, I'll get one, as that's kind of what happened for Age of Empires 2 and Age of Empires 3, the definitive editions. There are, however, 44 achievements available. Let's jump right to the pros. As I mentioned, the AoE soundtracks are some of my favorite game soundtracks. From 1 to 3, I've loved them all. They're all fantastic, moving soundtracks. I had number 3 in the collector's edition, and that soundtrack was beautiful. I know number 3 is not everybody's favorite game. I understand. It's really hard to come back from Age of Empires 2 and make something better. I think 3 was a phenomenal game, personally. In fact, we're going to do an Age of Empires 3 Definitive Edition, and I'm going to try to get some guests on here for that one so we can discuss it, because I am a big fan of that game. Another pro, the game works really well. It feels very similar to the original Age of Empires game, but it works much smoother. There are ample amounts of settings to customize the feeling you're looking for. That is one thing the Definitive Edition games kind of give you, is nothing but settings, and you can control and customize everything that you want. So I really like that. I think that's really good. Also, support for 4K is also really nice. You can see a lot of the screen at the same time, and it kind of offers this omnipresence feeling of controlling your entire civilization. And you can snag some sweet screenshots. So it looks really nice. 4K was a really nice addition. I'm glad they did it. Like I said, I'm using 5760 by 1080, so that's not 4K. But I also did pull it up on a 4K monitor, and it looks really, really nice. Now for the con. Unfortunately, your villagers are absolutely intolerable. Don't get me wrong, none of the Age of Empires games had smart builders. I can't tell you how many times I would have a villager blocked along the coast by building a wall and building themselves in. However, it happened a lot. But in Age of Empires Definitive Edition, it was far worse. They wouldn't walk past each other. They would glitch out on down trees or bushes. It was insane how many times they'd get hung up and kind of on an out of place pixel that didn't exist. And the biggest problem with that, since they had an active task running, they aren't shown as idle workers, so I couldn't just click on them even though they're just walking in place. So unless you're actively watching them, there isn't much you can do. So the workers are frustrating. I have never had this many issues with workers in a skirmish. It's just insanity. Every 30 seconds to a minute, I was catching one. It's like, oh, he's stuck on a bush. Oh, he's not going to walk around the bush. Oh, he's waiting in line for the bush. Oh, he just decided he doesn't want to go get it now. And he's not idle. He's just waiting. Another con, though it supports the triple screen resolution, the UI doesn't. As I mentioned, expect to get some neck strain on this one. It's really a frustrating experience. I just want them in the center screen. Like Halo puts the UI in the center screen, which I really appreciate that. I'm really glad Halo did that type of thing. This game could have easily done as well. I wish they would have. Last con, and it's more of a personal preference. I'm not a fan of games that start in the Stone Age epic. It tends to be the most drawn out of all epics, so I try to avoid it whenever I can. I will say Empire Earth is a game on RTS that I really didn't mind when it started in the Stone Age epic. But the Age of Empires ones, it drags, and it's like, come on, get me to anything else. Get me to another time frame, another time period that's more exciting than the Stone Age. Interesting story, I actually own Age of Empires and Age of Empires The Rise of Rome expansion pack in physical copy in their original big cardboard boxes. The original AoE came out in 1997 and required a Pentium 90, 16 megabytes of RAM, 80 megabytes of hard drive space, and Windows 95. Oh, how far we've come. So, would I recommend this game? For $3 to $5, I absolutely recommend this game. You know, it's a solid remaster of a great RTS that reinforced this genre. However, if you're paying full price at $19.99, I'd pass on this one and snag Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition, as it's a far superior RTS game, in my opinion, with a larger player count, and it's also $19.99 as well. You know, I probably wouldn't recommend Age of Empires 3. I would want you to get the full Age of Empires, edition of number 2. I think number 2 works really, really well. It's what I had the most memories on, without a doubt. I mean, we used to play it in middle school, actually. We had like 4 or 5 computers that would land up in our science room, and we'd actually play Age of Empires 2, which is a phenomenal experience. And, I have a lot of memories with that. And the Definitive Edition works really, really well. So, for right now in the Steam sale, pick it up for between $3 and $5. Absolutely go for it. It's a great deal. But if it's at full price, pass on it and get Age of Empires 2. You'll be much happier with that. But thank you for joining us on the Never Ending Backlog podcast. Today we reviewed Age of Empires Definitive Edition, and we'll see you tomorrow.